What's going on, everybody? Tom here with Black Sheep Keto, and welcome to another free ketogenic recipe just for you subscribers out there. And if you're not a subscriber yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button and liking the video to help the YouTube algorithm promote my content. Now, since it is fall and it is now an appropriate time to use pumpkin spice, I figured I'd bring you guys a fall treat. So today we're going to be making a keto pumpkin spice blondie. Effectively, what we're going to do is we're going to take that warm, delicious, kind of gooey blondie that everybody loves and add some pumpkin and pumpkin spice seasoning to it to turn it into a delicious fall treat. Now, as always, the full written recipe and macros will be down in the description box below, and let's get right into the video. So laid out in front of me here are all of the wet ingredients going into our blondies. There are going to be quite a few ingredients, but that's just the nature of blondies, and then we added the pumpkin spice, which kind of tweaks things a little bit. But don't worry, they're all things you can readily find at your grocery store. Now right here in this bowl, I have 1/2 cup of melted butter that is cooled down just ever so slightly. To that, we're going to add 2 eggs. Those are just large eggs. 1/4 cup of heavy whipping cream. 1/4 cup of a pumpkin puree. This is not a pumpkin pie filling. You'll find this in the canned food section. It just says pumpkin puree. If you look at the back, the ingredients will literally just be pumpkin. So that's what you want, and you'll want 1/4 cup of that. Because guys, I refuse to make something pumpkin spice without actually putting pumpkin in it. That just feels blasphemous to me. So this is going right in. Then we've got 1/2 cup of your favorite keto sweetener. Now this is Lakanto's monk fruit and erythritol blend. When I was developing this recipe, I was working through my whole cabinet of different sweeteners that I have. I've probably got like 15 different types. I really like this one, and I really liked using allulose, but whatever sweetener you want, I didn't find any that did not work. And then right here, I have Swerve's brown sugar replacement. So it's a keto-friendly brown sugar substitute. Now, this is half the pack, so it's about 6 ounces if you're in the US, or 1 cup roughly that is packed. If you're outside the US, it's about 170 grams. And then lastly, we have 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now we're gonna go ahead and mix this really well, and then I'll catch up with you with our dry ingredients. No, actually, since there are quite a few dry ingredients, I am going to just set this aside, but I will say that Swerve brown sugar replacement can clump a little bit, so you are going to have to whisk this quite a bit just to make sure all the clumps of that are broken up and you have a nice, smooth, wet ingredient bowl here. So let me go get the dry ingredients and we'll be right back. All right, now laid out in front of me here are all of our dry ingredients and a slightly smaller bowl. Reason for that is we are going to be adding the dry ingredients slowly into the wet, so make sure the wet bowl is the larger bowl. Now first up is 1 cup, or about 112 grams of almond flour. Then we have 1/3 cup, or about 40 grams of coconut flour. Right here is 1 teaspoon of xanthan gum. This is just our binding agent. Then we have 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Now I saved these for last because this is my pumpkin spice flavoring blend. And if you just buy store-bought pumpkin spice, it's gonna be 1.5 teaspoons of the store-bought pumpkin spice. But it's really easy to make yourself, so I'm just going to be making it. So right here, I have 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, and 1/8 teaspoon of ground cloves. And that's it. That's really all there is in a pumpkin spice seasoning. So instead of buying the store-bought stuff, I just use the ingredients I have on hand to make my own. Now we're going to go ahead and give this a nice whisking. I have to say, by the way, this smells absolutely phenomenal. Cool, that looks good enough to me, so let's go ahead and start making our batter. Now right here we have our wet ingredients and the dry ingredients, obviously, and I like to do this in 2 parts. So pour about half the dry ingredients in the bowl, whisk it together, pour the other half, whisk it together. So here is our blondie dough. And if you've made blondies before, you'll know that this looks a little bit thicker than your traditional dough. And that's because typically you would use twice the amount of butter that I did, but since there is fat in the almond flour, it doesn't bake right if you put all that fat in there and make it as liquidy. So what I like to do with this is we'll just have to spread it out evenly in our pan. And speaking of pan, get yourself an 8x8 baking dish and get it greased up with something, whether it be butter, olive oil, cooking oil spray, whatever you want. So I'm gonna grab that and I'll be right back. Now, personally, I choose to use an olive oil spray, but I think a coconut oil spray would actually do really well since this is a baked good. In any case, we're gonna go ahead and transfer this in there and spread it flat and kind of as evenly as you can. So here it is, my dough in the pan, and just another note about how thick the dough is. As it starts baking, the temperature of the oven is going to cause the butter that has now semi-solidified from me taking forever filming this. It will cause that to remelt, and then it'll even itself out pretty well. So just get it roughly smooth. It doesn't have to be perfect. The heat will cause the butter to melt, and it will flatten itself out. No big deal. You just don't want a giant glob in the center. So speaking of baking, now we're gonna go ahead and preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which I will put the Celsius equivalent on the screen now. And then we're gonna bake this for between 35 and 45 minutes. Now, I know what you guys are saying, wow, Tom, that is a long spread of time. Why would you possibly give us that kind of a delta? Reason being, it depends on how gooey you want your blondies. Now, some people like them incredibly gooey, and if that's the case, go for about 35 minutes. If you're like me, like I'm somewhere in the middle, about 40 minutes will do. If you want them cooked all the way through, go ahead and go with 45 minutes. The idea here is blondies typically have that kind of like gooey, soft, smushy texture to them. And I feel like at 45 minutes, they're a little overbaked for my liking, but I know everybody out there is a little bit different. So for me, this is going to go in a 350 degree Fahrenheit oven for about 40 minutes. You can check if it's done by just sticking a butter knife or a toothpick in there and making sure that it comes out relatively clean. So I'm gonna do that, and then I will catch up with you guys and show you the finished product. All right, everybody, now that you've seen the recipe and the finished product, if not, I will put it up on the screen right now, it is time for the taste test. Now in front of me here, I have something that probably will resemble what the final product photo looked like. I don't know. I've got to figure that out still. But this is basically our blondies that I went ahead and just cubed up into 2x2 squares, so you'll actually end up with 16 blondies, so a 4x4 grid when you slice it. And I did bake them for about 42 minutes, and then I pulled them out. Now this was actually yesterday. I had some things to do last night and didn't get around to filming the outro until today. So these have been cooling overnight, and as you can see, they are a wonderful texture. And I guess it's time for us to give it a taste. So here we go. Now, once these things are completely cool, which that is a caveat, you are going to want these things to cool down completely before you slice into them. Kind of like if you made a gooey chocolate chip cookie prior to keto, how you need to let those cool down. Same thing here, they will not be stable until they're cool. Once they cool down, you almost have this like fudgy, brownie kind of texture to them and a very strong pumpkin spice with that little hint of actual pumpkin that we threw in there. It's a fantastic flavor profile in my opinion. So for all of you out there that are looking for a delicious fall treat, I highly recommend you check out these Keto Pumpkin Spice Blondies. Now, as always, a link to the written recipe and the macros are going to be down in the description box below. If you like this video, leave it a like. If you have any questions, comments, or anything like that for me, leave them down in the comment section. And as always, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Now, before we go, I am going to say thank you to my supporters on Patreon, and then I will see you all in the next one.